Do you feel homes should be built more on a thematic way or something that
No, I can.
building a
I think you
theme?
can actually build a theme around what you like at home.
So you already have a set of ideas and you want that designer to only accept those points inside.
See, at the end of the day, interior designing is also a science. It's like you just don't let's say put some storage spaces and then you call that as a home.
Do you think it's a good idea to go with a good carpenter without getting the designing done?
No, I think that's absolutely the wrong way to go if you were to ask me, because what you get with a carpenter is basically the execution.
You have used quads, white quads. And what are your findings of using quads? Because there's a
See,
good.
we've used granite on our dining tables. We use granite on our living rooms. I think one thing about granite is that I think it's extremely scratch prone.
Hey everyone, welcome to Stories in Spaces, which is all about stories of those who have gone through the process of getting their home interiors done. So these are the people who have done the research, who have hunted interior designers, done the research on finishes, materials, dealt with work on site, follow ups, payments, and finally moving into the dream home. There are a lot of myths in the industry when it comes to what is a better finish, what is the alternative to plywoods or any material for that matters, and what is the different processes involved or simply better way of doing things. There are a lot of expert talking a lot about a lot of things, but how much of it is actually true and what did an end user had to get. Most importantly, we would discover the mindset or the thought process behind having to make a decision. I'm your host, Abdul Aleem, founder of an interior design firm called Crafterao. After consulting 1,000 plus clients and completing about 150 plus projects, I'm here today to change your I wish I knew to glad I know. This is Stories and Spaces. Let's get into it. So, to get started with, could you please tell me about your home and interiors?
So Aleem, so we have a flat in Salarpuria, Sattva Divinity. This is a project on the Mysore Road, and so we bought this property in 2021, and so that was right in the middle of COVID. So just when probably the first wave was over and the second wave had come in. So it's a 1749 square feet flat, a 3 bedroom flat.
What was the biggest challenge? Like you mentioned, it was right in the time of COVID, you had limited access. That makes this question more interesting in a way. What was going on in your mind when you had to make a decision?
So I think it's like what most people go through. So there are plenty of ideas that come to your mind. You want to do X, you want to do Y, and right from A to Z, you would want to probably do everything that you could. It's not every day that you buy a home, right? You put in a lot of your hard-earned money into the home, and you would want it to probably be the best place that it can be. I think the first challenge that we had to get across was a lot of different thoughts that we had in mind in terms of how we wanted to get this done. And but one thing that was pretty clear right from the beginning was that we wanted the space to be quite clutter free. What I mean by clutter free is we didn't want too many storage spaces. We didn't want anything in the house which probably blocks a lot of natural light coming in. The sense of space has to be was the most important thing for us. Like it should not appear like anybody who comes in should feel a sense of space. And other thing that was very clear to us was the play on neutral colors. We didn't want something extremely flashy.
Now, how was that communication happen at all? As a client, you had so many inputs first, and you wanted the house to be in a specific way. And one good part about this is that you've already understood that you wanted a clutter free space, you wanted neutral colors and everything. How was your thinking when you approached the designer, and what did they come up with, and how did you had to make that decision?
See, initially, when we contact the designer, so obviously, it's probably the first time that we actually started talking. So probably we took a little while to probably understand each other, and for us to probably accept the point that we can actually take some ideas from them, and
Okay.
for them to understand what we actually wanted. So So probably I think before we could actually hone in or rather freeze on the first on the design that we would probably go ahead finally with. I think there were at least about 3 to 4 iterations that were done. The first iteration was very different from what we actually wanted. The second was a little closer. The third was a lot more closer, but then probably the fourth or the fifth iteration is where we actually hit the nail on the head.
So probably you're mentioning first that you're having a set of ideas already and you communicated that, and then you realized over the process that they can actually give you inputs.
Yep,
That was the first finding.
that's right.
So this happens a lot of time, right? As a customer, that as I talk about a lot of customers and all around that. So you already have a set of ideas and you want that designer to only accept those points
Correct.
and give you the output.
Yep.
And your finding was that they could actually give you more insight.
So the point is, you have a certain thought process, but then it probably wouldn't. See, at the end of the day, interior designing is also a science. It's like you just don't let's say put some storage spaces and then you call that as a home. So I think there's a lot more thing to interiors and about the aesthetics in terms of the color combinations, what has to fit in where. Simple things like where should which direction should the TV be in, right? Maybe the builder probably had made a provision for a TV at probably a television set at one point, and probably it was suggested that you probably change it.
Okay.
Could be in the kitchen, like you probably change the orientation of the plumbing points.
How was your decision per se when you decided, okay, this is the right person for me? You had set of ideas with you and you started reaching the usual processes. You start reaching to companies, different firms, and they come back telling this is here, this change is there. So what was your mindset behind having to make a decision to start with? And as you mentioned, it was right in middle of pandemic and you had limited access, so you had to take whatever you got. And is it because you did less of the research, or you felt, okay, after talking to so many people, this is so? What made you choose to?
See, the whole point was it was right in bang in the middle of COVID. So obviously we couldn't go around, and probably it was probably a blessing in disguise in hindsight, because the more you see, the more you get confused. And so I think what was important for us was the follow up from the designer, and a constant communication that was required in terms of, let's say, be it the pricing, be it what would be the timelines, etc., and all that. So I think that was critical for us, because obviously we couldn't go around. It was probably a blessing in disguise, but then so the typically way we operate is that at the moment we get comfortable with let's say how the entire process is going, be it the transparency around pricing, be it let's say the follow-up, because obviously there was a choice that the designer had. Let's say, as I said, we did approach a couple of other designers also, but then there was somewhere a thing that it's COVID, so let's probably get the process started after COVID, once things settle down and all that. So but then there was also an approach that you take, okay fine, COVID probably is the time when you actually can't do the actual work on the property, but then you can actually do a lot of work in terms of probably conceptualizing that once the situation settles down, how would you probably execute. I think that was something which was more critical for us, that somebody who maintains that communication with us uses the time that was available, because obviously there was nothing that we could do, there was nothing that the designer could do. Only thing that we could do was probably discuss, ideate, and then put things in place. Right? So that was something which was absolutely important for us, because we didn't want to lose it, because it was like you do whatever is required to be done in terms of designing, conceptualizing, ideating when you have the time. Otherwise, typically what happens is that you ideate and then you directly get on to execution. So here we didn't have that choice. We had to wait for things to settle down before we could actually start the work.
Which added a plus point for you.
Which was actually a plus point for us. And as I said, the designer probably too also had a choice, saying that, okay, fine, let's wait for things to settle down and then pick it up. But then it was quite the opposite. So we actually started talking, and then because things were not in our control at all, so I think that talking basically helped freeze a lot of things, change our perspective to how we should probably look at things and all that. And I think that's probably was something which was absolutely critical for us, because it's about how you communicate and how transparent you are, how interested you are in that, because it's like probably just as we have an option of a lot of designers, I'm sure the designers too have a lot of customers. So it's just that how you look at a customer who's approaching you, and how do you deal with the customer, how do you treat the customer. That was more critical.
So you mentioned a couple of points here, right? Responsiveness, and having to understand the idea that that was a limited accessibility because of COVID, everything was shut, and the ideation, the ideas that came in. So these are the few qualities that you see in a designer, which you saw,
Yeah.
and you felt that. Basically, if you sum it up, it is like a responsible people.
At least they should be somebody who's willing to talk,
Okay.
who's at least willing to discuss, and then do that. See, otherwise we could have said that, okay, fine, there's a project, we can as well pick it up after things settle down, and then it's just what? I mean, it's just
So
a
basically,
question
you
of
saw interest.
the interest. Like,
You saw the
for
interest
example,
even
just
if
as we
the-
are interested in getting a home done, there should also be, if not more, at least an equal amount of interest, saying that, okay, fine, okay, let's at least try to understand what the perspective is, and then try to get that in.
So all these series of events, you thought, okay, this is the best go, and you actually got it started with.
Yes, we actually got it started, and it was basically a hunch. It was basically
Okay.
what I would say, a gut that we
Okay.
went with, saying that
Okay.
yeah, that things are going to work out. And
Okay.
as I said, the entire process of the communication, where there was never a point that that the ball was dropped in terms of communication. It was always seamless. Let's say, for example, even when we signed the dotted line by paying whatever is the advance amount for them to start the designing and all that. So even after that, there was always a constant communication. Like, there were calls set up, it was heard, there were ideas suggested, ideas taken. So obviously there were some ideas that we gave which the designer incorporated. There were certain ideas that the designer gave which we were okay with.
Okay, so if I have to put it across in a different words, so everything that you're telling is somebody who's responsible, who's responsive. I mean, if there are interior designers out there who wanted to understand, think about a thing about what a customer is thinking while signing a document. I mean, it's getting the work started. So if there are designers out there who want to understand or improve on how do they get started. Couple of points which are patience. I think that is one of the biggest quality a designer can have, in specifically interior design industry. So you think that that's definitely an added point.
That was
Patience of
definitely one of the reasons as to why
Achha, you're telling
we
that's
went
a most of it. That is majorly a deciding factor for you.
For me, it was a deciding factor, because it's all about how you like, I mean, you can treat a customer in various ways, but then it's more about getting that communication going, and not just once, twice, thrice, but then keeping that pretty
Consistently.
throughout. Yeah.
So, what are your findings about interior industry, right? A couple of things that you saw, or a couple of things that you thought that it is going to be like this. But what were your findings? Then later on, you discovered, no, whatever I had thought was different, and now this is completely different. I was wrong at certain levels. Do you have any findings like that?
See, we do have a lot of findings. See, just as most probably any customer, any person who buys a home, probably interior designing is all about, let's say, your furnitures, your wardrobes, and your the basic things like your dining tables and your kitchen, etc., and all that. And then it's all about storage spaces and all that. So it starts from there, and then aesthetics is something which probably you do pay attention to. Of course, we also did go through a lot of the YouTube videos. I mean, there's hundreds available right now, and there are a lot of things that that keep coming up and all that. So one thing that we found about the interior designing industry is that, one, it's a constantly evolving industry, and then ideas change. different concepts come up, and then the biggest finding was that there can actually be a theme to how you design an interior. Like you can follow a Mediterranean theme, you can follow a very minimalist theme, you can follow a classic theme, you can follow a theme which is largely, I would not say centric to nature, but then things like, for example, if you talk about nature, then a lot of wood being used in the house.
Talking about theme, right? This is, according to you, you said you are like this. You found out that this can be done. You've only found out that this is also a way of being done, because for you it was only
See, it
furniture.
can be done is one thing. It's about you have ideas. Can that ideas be put into a theme, and
Okay.
then
Okay.
and can a
Evolve.
structure be put around that? Let's say, for example, okay, fine. These are the basic requirements. Okay, now can it be put in the form of a theme, and that can the theme be developed into something which is a lot more concrete and a lot more seamless, so that there is a uniform pattern that basically comes through the entire home. It's not like, I mean, in the living room there's a different feel that you get, and then you go to the other parts of the house or the home, then you get a different feel. It's not like there are different themes, 5 or 6 different themes running through the same home, which is probably about 1749 square feet. It's about how you carry the theme throughout. I think.
Now, talking about themes, you told that this is one of your findings that you came across, that there could be a theme that they can follow. What is the question arises? What is the difference between having to go ahead with a normal carpenters, because normal skill levels, those are all already there in the industry, and a lot of time a client, due to a lot of various reasons, go for and get the works done, and there's no doubt about that, it will come out good or bad. But then the question really is, do you think, when you differentiate between, do you think it's a good idea to go with a good carpenter without getting the designing done?
No, I think that's absolutely the wrong way to go if you were to ask me, because what you get with a carpenter is basically the execution. I think here execution is let's say 50% of what interior designing is all about, but I think the remaining 50% is as I said, it's about the idea, it's about the theme that basically flows through the home, because it's not that you're going to stay in that home for a long time, right? You stay day in and day out, and then it should actually reflect your personality also, to a very large extent, because something that you are comfortable with, something that you would really want to come back to.
Talking about having your personality reflecting in your home, the idea about having your personality being reflected in a home, how much do you agree with this part, that it should be, the place should be a reflection of the people staying there, and what is one, if there is any drawback of it? Do you think there is a drawback of it after all?
There could be a drawback of it, because one is that it becomes very predictable. I mean, let's say, for example, if there is too much of your personality that's coming in, it becomes quite predictable in terms of how it. I think there should be a bit of contrast also with what the personality is. Let's say, for example, somebody would probably prefer, let's say, neutral tones across without any pop of colors coming up and all that. But then you need those pop of colors coming up. Otherwise, what happens becomes very monotonish, and I think that's where the designers come in, saying that, okay, fine. I mean, you could have a very monochromatic thought process, but then I think I think that's where the designer comes in, saying that, okay, fine, okay, let me just add a bit of zest, let me add a bit of color, let me add something which probably would still reflect your personality in a lot of ways, but then still probably bring a lot of bring a bit of, I would say, variation to probably the entire to the home, in terms of how it looks and feels across.
So talking about themes, right? Talking about following a theme, which is important for various reasons. One of which you mentioned is that it gives a different feel when you are in a bedroom, different feel when you are in the dining, different feel when you are in living area. And it has a lot of things to do with how the place is built, the furnitures that are added, the artifacts that enhances the look, maybe the foreground, the background, all of it. If you follow a theme, let us say there is Mediterranean theme, let us European, there is Western, Rome, mid-century modern, and it is just a few numbers, but the list goes on and on. This is one of the concepts. Another concept is that it is a quote. Basically, it is a quote which explains that keep everything aside, go for what you prefer and what you like, because that is not going to go out of style. Okay. So if you had to choose a theme or something that you prefer, which is not a theme, basically it's a mixture. Let us say one element is used of some theme, and in the same area another element is used of some other theme. But then for you, you like that. Do you feel homes should be built more on a thematic way or something that you like? Because everything that you like will never go out of style.
I think you can build a theme around what you like.
You will vouch for more of the thing which is
No,
building a
I think
theme.
you can actually build a theme around what you like. Like, say, for example, one of the themes that we had was minimalist. Other thing that we had was contemporary. And other thing, we like to keep a lot of plants at home. Something that probably we were not able to do earlier. So we want to have place for plants at homes, and I think these days you got a lot of indoor plants which you can actually keep. So that adds adds a lot of color, natural color, in pop of color into the home. I think you can actually build a theme around. You can actually build a theme around keeping it minimalist. You can actually build a theme around how you can actually have plants come into your interior, right? And these are not your artificial plants, these are your natural plants. I mean, and it also starts from what kind of plants do you actually put in which part of the home. Like, you can't put creepers everywhere. Like, you can't put flowery plants everywhere. So there has to be a place for everything. So I think you can build a theme around things that you like. So we like the place to be clutter free. Now that probably tends towards being contemporary or minimalist. Right, then we play on neutral tone, so that probably is again something which goes with let's say keeping it simple and keeping it bright, keeping it sober, right? And then there is a plant angle that comes in, which basically is something which goes probably let's say being a little closer to nature, like your bonsai plants or anything as such and all that. I think there's a lot of there's a theme that you can build around this. It's about how you give probably how you get that probably theme to life. I think that's where the designers come in. As I said, a carpenter would probably say that if I would want a storage space, I want a storage space. I mean, it's tall, short, whatever. I think they'll do it. But I think how you get that storage space fit into the overall theme. I think that's where a designer comes in, and I think that's where the value comes in.
Talking about another idea is talking about different finishes that are there. Probably one of the questions is that which finish is better. Personally, I feel there is not a right answer for it. Like, this finish is better than that finish because it has its own advantages, disadvantages. For me, it's more about what I would prefer and what I would like. And that is what I do a lot of times, that I would try to first understand and then suggest something. This comes with another idea is that we as a customers, a lot of time we go look for it online, majorly YouTube, Instagram shorts, reels. There are so many things, and a new concept comes in, and a lot of time we tend to look at a foreign concept that is not made for an Indian market. As a customer, you would want it,
Right.
but for me it becomes as a designer, if I have to talk, it becomes our responsibility to suggest you which is right and which is wrong. From this, there is always a question on kitchen finish of using a lacquered glass, because it breaks, it's fragile, but the finish of it is a different. Talking about specifically kitchen, talking about specifically glass finish, you have been using one for about 3 years now. What are your findings on glass for kitchen specifically?
I think one is it's contrary to what people think. it's not been maintenance heavy. It's actually been maintenance light. All that you need is probably just a spray of water and then a clean microfiber cloth to just wipe it clean. I think it's also got to do with probably how you probably use your kitchen. I think the thing that's
Indian
probably
uses.
the thing that's worked in our favor is that we again follow a very minimalist kind of an approach when it comes to kitchen also, like not too many utensils around. So basically whatever is required is what you get. Let's say for example, there are a lot of times when you actually tend to go and bin shop in terms of, let's say you want this, you want everything, and then there's a mismatch of everything as such. So we went in for a probably a very minimalist kind of a approach to utensils also. So you will not find utensils lying around, and you will not find those heavy ones and all that.
So it was
It
properly planned.
It was properly planned, and the cabinets were also designed around that, saying that we don't want to have. Let's say the whole approach was that when you walk into the house, you should not see utensils lying around. Like everything should be concealed, and what you're seeing is probably the just the kitchen in all its. I would not say glory, probably is not the right word, but then I think you just see the kitchen which is clutter free. Otherwise, you normally, it should not be like a restaurant kind of a kitchen where you enter and then you find a lot of utensils lying around and all that. So it has to be pretty much clean, and when you come in, it should be like as if you probably, like the way you treat a kitchen is probably the way you probably would treat your bedroom to it has to be neat, it has to be spick and span. And if it has to be spick and span, I think one of the key things that goes into is the number of utensils that you have, how you use those utensils. And I think that way, the lacquered finish, the lacquered glass has helped us quite a bit, because even after 3 years, like for example, with probably a veneer finish or probably a laminate, I think over a period of time, you keep wiping it clean, I think it loses its luster and shine a bit. But with glass, I think it's quite the opposite, where I think we have the shine maintained after repeated use also. I think, and I think but I think the only thing is that you'll have to be a little careful in terms of how you handle that particular thing, because.
So talking about handling it right, there is always a fear. This is what I feel a lot of in our mind it goes, right? It's a glass and there are utensils, and what if I hit with unknowingly, there is a chance. Now you've been using it for 3 years. Do you feel that's a right approach, or how does it
Initially,
go?
we were quite conscious about
Initially
it.
you were
Initially, we
still-
were quite conscious about it, but then over a period of time, I think it's
You
just
got
that
used to it.
it becomes a bit of a habit, saying that you find that you use your utensils and the way you place them, the way you pick them up. I think you basically just get used to it. Initially, yes, we were quite conscious, saying that what if
it's as good as buying a new phone. Every time we buy a new phone,
Yeah,
I'll be a
that's
little
right.
careful about it. But then after a
It
couple
just
of months,
becomes routine
it's,
for you,
it's the same.
and it's just that how you place your utensils, how you pick them up, and how you use your utensils. I think that goes a lot. That goes a long way in terms of how the lacquered glass experience is for you. As I said, I think one thing critical with a lacquered glass is, I think the minimalist kitchen, the minimalist approach to how you handle your kitchen. I think that probably plays an important part. You cannot have too many things lying around
And
as
like
such.
you just mentioned, the kitchen is somewhere where a lot of time this is a common thing that maintaining is difficult. So yeah, as you're mentioning, first thing is plan it in a way that all the
correct.
utensils goes under its places. And secondly, cleaning is biggest issue. Not to mention the oil fumes, though the chimney is switched on and you would still see oil fumes lying next to your utensils which are there. Now you're telling it's actually a plus point to have a lacquered glass. And in fact, if you have a choice of selecting a lacquered glass with other finishes, for you, do you have to if you have to redo it, would you rather consider?
No, I would still go with the lacquered glass, because I think it's
Non-negotiable.
just about getting used to the thing that you have around you, right? Probably if you had a laminate, or if you had a veneer thing, maybe your approach to how you handle those things probably would be tailored to that, right? So maybe I know that laminate is going to be a little more abuse friendly. Like for example, even if a small hit or a small scratch there probably wouldn't make too much of a difference to probably wouldn't affect the laminate quite a bit. But I know for sure that with glass I'll have to be a little extra careful. But I think it still works for me, because I think it's more about there's always a certain amount of brightness that basically comes in with a lacquered glass, because what light basically gets reflected from the glass, so that adds an airy feel to the kitchen. Like ever since we moved in, I think even if we don't use the light in the kitchen except in the evenings, which is quite natural for you to use light, but otherwise in the daytime there's a lot of reflection of light that comes from the lacquered glass, and I think that helps in keeping the kitchen airy.
Perfect.
And there's always a nice feel that when you look at something like that, which is probably shiny, and then I think that's the property of the glass is that the moment you wipe it clean, I think it stays quite shiny, I think, and then it reflects a lot of light. I think that was very critical for us. Even if I have to redo it, maybe I'll go for a different shade of a lacquered glass, but then I'll still stick with the lacquered glass. Yeah.
As far as we are still talking about kitchen and talking about space planning and putting utensils, one of the other common confusion that I get to see a lot is having or the water purifier under counter. I think couple of years back it wasn't that famous, though it was there. Now until recently, where it is really in trend. And I can a lot of time when I get to talk about it, I still feel some resistance in terms of having a water purifier under the sink. You've been using it for 3 years plus, and what is your experience having to have a water purifier under counter?
It definitely is a space saver kind of. Let's say, for example, it doesn't take up space. Let's say on the kitchen counter, so it doesn't take up space, so it just gets hidden under a sort of a cubby hole, which is actually tailor made for that, right? So it gets covered up, and so what is not visible and what doesn't take up space, I think basically just helps in again keeping the kitchen clutter free. The more appliances that are seen out in the open on the counter, I think it just adds to the sense of clutter. So anything that probably can be made clutter free by putting them under a cubby hole or probably a cabinet as such, I think I'll go for that any day. But I think in recent times, I think we've come across some very sleek RO units, which are probably like a computer screen or probably a television screen and all that, which actually can be fixed to the wall and all that. But I think that would still probably again take up
Some of the space,
and then
again all those wires.
the wires and all that. So I think the whole idea was to keep the kitchen clutter free. I think that's been.
So it's always a plus point.
I would, if I were to probably redo it also, I would redo it the same way. Maybe a bit of, let's say, maybe the space, I would probably have maybe a slightly larger space for that, but then otherwise it would still be under in the storage RO unit rather than keeping it in the open any day.
Great. As far as we are talking about finishes again, lacquered glass, and another compelling finish material that we get to see to and fro a lot of time is having to decide between laminates and veneer finishes. Like I told you, there's no one better finish to go by just directly, but then it's all about what it has to offer us back. And if I have to think about it, and if I have to suggest something, I would look at it as a pro and a con. Now, if you have to see that your thought on it, and if you have to use laminate for a wardrobe or a veneer for a wardrobe, what is your finding on veneer put together?
So veneer, I think, is again a lot more natural in terms of its finish.
Now you're mentioning natural. Does it have to do with the theme as well? Wherein if there is a theme, only we can go. If there isn't a theme,
I think veneer also comes in a lot of shades, and I think this is one of the things that we learned from the designer also, that actually the veneer can be of a neutral color, but then you can actually color it in whichever color that you choose to do it. Right? And
So basically, when we talk about veneer, it's a natural
it's a natural
product.
thing, so it gives you a lot
It comes with a natural
it
color.
gives you a natural feel. And I think the best part of veneer is that let's say, for example, if it loses its shine, if it loses its luster in about let's say
Couple of
4-5
years.
years, all that it needs is probably a bit of sanding and then another coat of polish,
Repolishing.
and I think it's as good as new. And I think it's contrary to the what people think. I think it's quite easy to maintain. All that it needs is all that you probably need to do is that not to use any sort of chemicals on it. Let's say, for example, like this is something which we learned from my previous experience, that we used to use a lot of colon to wipe it clean and all that. Colon or any other cleaning liquid that's available.
Colon is actually a good. Lot of people do that. Now you've been doing that, and now you found out that it was actually taking.
It was
your
actually
finish
probably
down.
over a period of time, constant use. I think it takes away a lot of shine and thing that.
Okay,
So
but
I think
then
the best
that
thing.
is, but then that is marketed in a way that it is for the shine.
No, it is actually. I would
Cleaning.
rather use a colon on a lacquered glass, but if it's
Okay, it
veneer,
is specific to a glass finish, and it
I
is.
would rather look at it using it on, let's say, probably to wipe, clean a dining table, probably a living room
But
table.
not a veneer and
I
not
would
laminate.
not use it on veneer. I would use it on laminate because it hardly has any difference on the laminate, but over a period of time it would still lose its shine. I think with veneer, what typically works for us, the way we maintain it, let's say over the last 3 years, is just dry wipe it. Maybe once in 3 months or once in 2 months, just spray a little bit of water and then again wipe it clean with a microfiber cloth. I think it's absolutely critical. I think because I think veneer probably has to be treated the way you treat your car. Like for example, you can wipe your car with with a cloth, with a used cloth. Can be a used T-shirt or something. It would still absorb water, but then it's just about like you use the right kind of materials and it just probably lasts much longer. So what we've observed is that, let's say for example, at least that's what we feel, that the way we got our interiors probably 3 years back, it's probably because we've been able to maintain it in a way without any use of let's say any cleaning liquid. We have not used cleaning liquid on it till date. It just dry wipe it and just once in a while just take a spray bottle, just spray some droplets of water and then wipe it clean, and I think it just keeps going. Very easy to maintain, and then because you wipe it, I think it doesn't lose its luster. And I think we don't use a hard cloth. It's, as I said, it's a very soft cloth that you use, which actually has, in fact, probably I would probably dare say that maybe it adds a bit of
shine
to it also, because the moment you clean the dust, you clear away the dust, I think the shine comes on its own. I think critical is to not let dust accumulate it, not let dust sit on it, and then clean it, and not use any sort of liquid or anything, because what happens, you spray let's say water or anything on something where there's a dust sitting on it, right? It just makes the dust sit on it, and then you wipe it, and then it just gets stuck to the thing.
That again takes down the
I think all that you need is just a brush, a sort of a cleaning brush.
As far as we are talking about this, see, another compelling question is that maintenance. Oh yes, interiors. Okay, you have an high investment there. Okay. Talking about high investment, do you think the concept about affordable interiors works? And do you think that there is a common myth that when you go for interiors, it is way too expensive? Is it good to polarize it in a way that okay, it could be cost effective, and it is very expensive? Like, what is the concept behind it? As a customer, what is your
it's
thought?
all about let's say for example the designer that we went with. We were given all options. Like we were given option of laminate, we were given the option of veneer, we were given the option of let's say for the wardrobes, we could go for an Aristo.
Okay, so the process goes into details. Now, first preferences,
No,
ideas,
it's more about
designs.
it's not about preferences. Let's say, for example, I may not have known about veneer at all, or what are the properties of a veneer. So I need somebody to come and tell me, saying that okay, fine, you've chosen a laminate. Now these are the pros and cons of laminate. Now this is an alternate material, slightly higher in cost, but then probably gives a different
So
feel to the
probably
whole.
it is about understanding your understanding
No,
your
I think it's all about giving you options,
options.
telling you what options are there.
What are the available options?
What are the available options, and what are the pluses and minuses? And then also the costing. Let's say,
And
for
plus
example,
costing.
yeah, and if
Yes.
it is somebody who probably feels, okay, fine, I'm okay to invest that kind of a money for a different experience that I get. As I said, I mean, it's not every day that you do your interiors of home. You do your interiors of the home probably only once in your probably once in the lifetime of a home. I don't think anybody would have the patience and to
go through that
through the process again.
Okay.
Right. So you do it once, you probably try to get it, if not completely right, at least about 70 to 80% right, so that it's something which you're comfortable with. I think it's more about looking at.
So we are talking about, now you just mentioned that it is not just about having to suggest you different materials and different finishes, but more importantly the costing that involves around that.
Absolutely, because
And it
interiors
depends
is all
on-
about cost.
And it is all about cost.
I can get, let's say, if I have a budget, I can get the interiors done in 10 lakhs. I can get the interiors done in, let's say, 15. I can go even up to 50.
50.
It's all about what my preferences are.
And how you coordinate with the designer and how they come back to you by telling this is also there.
See, at the end of the day, I think it's all about you probably would be mentally prepared for an inflation of around, let's say, 20
is a common
20 to 25%, because you have a basic understanding, and then you add on a lot of things. Let's say, for example, initially when we started off with our home, so we thought we'll only get the kitchen countertop done in, let's say, a granite.
Okay.
Right, but then we said that we'll also get probably the dado wall, or probably the kitchen wall also done in the same thing. So now that was an afterthought. Now we also had a thought. We also could have done it, got it done through the lacquered glass, saying that if fine, you put a same colored lacquered glass, or probably a contrasting color and all that. So, but then it was the designer who suggested, saying that maybe you can actually go for the same finish, so that there is a lot of consistency and uniformity that comes in. And then it is also about getting that sense of light. Right, airiness, what you would call it. So that means again your color of your the granite stone that you use.
Color of granite.
The color of the granite is again matters quite a bit, because you use a darker shade, you use something which has got a matte finish. Again, it impacts the how the light gets distributed in the area.
In terms of budget, in terms of look and feel, in terms of aesthetics, talking about granite and quartz, and
Sorry, I must correct you. I think it was quartz that we used, not granite. Correct. It was quartz.
Now, since you use quartz, now we were recently into an interesting discussion on quartz and granite with other podcast. You have used granite. You have used quartz, white quartz. And what are your findings of using quartz? Because there's a good...
we used granite on our dining tables. We used granite on a living room. So I think one thing about granite is that I think it's extremely scratch prone.
Granite is scratch prone?
In the sense, let's say, for example, you take a sharp, let's say, for example, in the kitchen. So you tend to use a lot of sharp, or it could be a kitchen knife, or could be something.
Use it to cut, use it to keep,
whatever, and all that. So I think what we've realized is that I think probably it's a little more prone to scratches, whereas a quartz that way is a lot more durable.
In terms of scratch?
In terms of, let's say, how it would probably take on things that normally go in a kitchen. Right, in kitchen you tend to use your let's say utensils and your pressure cookers, or your let's say the basic things for cutting, slicing and all that.
And you have a hot pan.
You have a hot pan, and then what are the properties?
Then
I mean, you sometimes are not entirely careful always. So you tend to probably just subconsciously
put it
there, and then I think that way I think quartz has been we found it to be extremely durable, and then as I said, it's been about it's been exactly 3 years, and not a single issue.
I think a lot of time this is again a good, very big confusion. Aesthetically, everybody would prefer quads to be on a higher side, and a lot of people think that that is the only reason quads is used because it adds on to the aesthetics. But then I have a different thought on that. Now, just you mentioned it is still durable.
It is extremely durable,
Extremely
and
durable.
I think, I think apart from the aesthetics, I think aesthetics is not about how it looks and feels when you actually lay it, right? It's all about how it looks and feels, let's say 3 years, 2 years, 3 years down the line. And I think that way, we've been extremely happy with how it's come about.
Okay.
One, it's not exactly, it's got a glossy feel to it, but then again, with granite, again, what you find is that there are a lot of smudge marks that you actually find, right? Like for example, when you're cooking, you tend to have your hands which are oily and all that, so you tend to place your hand on the granite. So there are a lot of smudge marks that comes in because it's got a very glossy glass-like feel to it. Whereas with quartz, I think it's still a slab of stone, and then the smudge marks are very minimal, non-existent actually.
Non-existent, completely.
Non-existent. I think we've not had any issues as such. All that it requires is just a wipe clean, and then you don't have to really go with a cloth in your hand saying that there is a smudge mark here, there's a smudge mark there. Just constantly keep wiping it. Very low maintenance.
I think more importantly now I'm trying to understand it further. It is not quads which is smudge proof or not smudge proof. It is a category of a quartz which is durable and less durable, more durable.
Probably because I think
There are
maybe
different
maybe we
variants.
were suggested the right quartz variety, I would say. So probably we were suggested the right one, and I think that's worked absolutely fine for us.
So
Because there was a logic also to it, because the quartz that we use had got this shiny bits, glitters or whatever you call it, the glitters and grain, and that actually tends to add that pop of shine and color that comes coming. So every time you wipe it, then there's always a shine that keeps coming in, and that again adds to the sense of airiness, because again the light falls, the light gets reflected. So I think probably there's a lot more science to it than what it is.
So talking about materials and finishes, the materials and finishes which are used here, like what brand of quartz is used, what laminate is used, and everything around materials, there is a PDF copy in the link below. You can simply download it to get more insights about the project. So when you are finalizing, this goes back again to and fro on the question, when you are finalizing, see, interior design process is one of the tedious tasks. And it is not a day or two job. There is good amount of time involved, creativity, good knowledge about materials, finishes, durability. When there are so many factors, things tends to get a little complicated in a lot of different ways. And since this industry is where we deal with work on sites and there are labors involved, and there is dust, there is finishes, what if things don't come out the way we wanted, and so many things. There is a daunting question that comes that I lot of time try to figure out, and that I want to ask you is that, as a customer, what is your expectations on an interior designer? That okay, if these things are sorted out, I'm done. If these things are not there, it is a complete no. So what are the expectations that a customer has overall?
One is, of course, to understand what the customer wants, and the customer would want a lot of things, right? More often than not, I think customers are a little confused. Mishmash of thoughts, etc. And all that. I think probably it's for the designer to probably give a direction to that thought.
To complicate stuff, what happens these days is that no, you have to do it. You go for multiple designers. That will give you definitely a better perspective and better idea on who's better than who. Now on that process, don't you feel you get more confused at a certain level, or should you limit it, or should you not, or should you go for 10 people and no, you will, the more you research, the more you get knowledge about it. What is like overall thing which is going on in a customer's mind when he's trying to make a decision?
See, as I said, for us it was quite the opposite. Had it not been for COVID, maybe we would have gone interior designer hunting. But then since we didn't have a choice, So we were also quite eager to get on with things. And I think because when I say get on with things, is at least we needed somebody who can actually talk to us, understand what we want. As I said, just as any other customer, we also had a lot of things in our mind. We want to do this, we want to do that. I mean, could be something like as good as a puja room. How we want to get the puja. Initially, if I were to think about how we started, we wanted to have a small puja room, probably engraved on, not engraved, or rather fixed on the wall. From that, we moved to a proper
cabinet.
puja room, and then we were looking at what materials to be used. Let's say, for example, whether we use a ply, or whether we use a laminate, or whether we use marble. How do we get the finishing of the puja room done? That's when the designer came up with the concept of something called as an onyx stone. So we never knew about it. That it's got a self reflecting properties, light emanating properties as such. So we didn't know about that. So where do you put that thing? So do you put the entire puja room in onyx, or you put a specific part where you probably keep the idols and all that in onyx? What color? I think that's where it comes in. So it's again like even with a minimalist theme, you would want a puja room to be fixed on a wall, which works for you, which is normally a lot of people do. But then even with the minimalist thing, how can you incorporate a different puja room so that one your basic preferences are taken care of, and then you also add value to it. Now, onyx is something which we never knew. That something like that existed as such. So again, that was a value add that came in, and that actually changed our perception, or rather our thought process, saying that okay, fine, maybe then we could look at a puja room. Then we started adding things to it. Let's say we want the entire puja room, apart from the doors, obviously, to be made of marble. Again, whether it should be the same shade of marble that we'd use in the kitchen, the one in the puja room. So the kitchen had, I think it's called as Bianca maple or something like that, which has got
Bianco
that
maple.
glitters, right? So obviously that can't go in the puja room. So it has to be pure white marble. So again, so I think that's
all in
where
all, to encapsulate all in all, somebody who has knowledge about it and who can suggest, and when suggesting, be specific about what has been suggested.
And why
that completely and why
it's
that
been-
is
I think why is the most important thing, because I think that's where the thing comes in. So let's
so
say
if a designer is able to answer the why, I mean, give you suggestions, more importantly,
no, suggestions, and then give a logic to that suggestion, saying that okay, fine, if there is a if you're suggesting something,
Why is it
why
suggested?
are you suggesting that, and what's the difference between what was initially thought to what can be, or what is the alternate? I think that's critical. I think that's where the designer comes in, and then I think that's a value add that probably a designer gets in, which probably a carpenter or let's say a layman would not be able to do. A layman for a puja room is just a square box,
and then put
put some shelves and all that, and then do it. How do you actually get aesthetics into the puja room also, so that you make it a lot more, I would not say, so maybe a lot more, I mean, at least that spirituality should basically come in when you look at the puja room, because it's something which is...
Now, like you mentioned, no, it had living room has a purpose, and it is not just furniture put across and arranged in a way. It goes deeper into understanding that what is the feel that a place is giving you. So similarly, a puja room is made. It is not just a box and a door added, but what it is communicating and what feel. Now, purpose of puja room is to add a bit of a spirituality to it, and that piece of box that we are making should communicate that back.
It should basically communicate that, and it should resonate. That's the whole thing. Within whatever, let's say, larger concept that you have, I say minimalist, not too many storage spaces. I think that's what it is.
That's what it is. Another question that I have is, what advice you have for interior designers out there? I think majorly we have covered the entire podcast on that.
I think it's about one is spend that time that is required with the client. It's just the classic cliche that we get, saying that one size doesn't fit all, right? So one theme doesn't fit all the customers. So each customer is different. So I would not say customer, each client is different. And I mean, I think you need to give every client that basically comes across to you, the time to understand what he or she wants, and then basically bring in the knowledge that they have in terms of, could be the knowledge in terms of, let's say, the aesthetics, could be the knowledge in terms of the science, in terms of what materials to be used, how things have to be placed for one getting whatever the maximum that the customer wants. Let's say in our case it was space. So how do you design? Obviously, you have to have cabinets in your home. So there's no way you're going to do with the cabinets, right? But then it's all about how you place them, how you design them, so that the basic requirement of the client. In our case, it was space, and I think that's where I think.
So if a designer understands their customers' need, because it is different for customer to customer, to get a proper understanding of them, being patiently listening.
One is that, let's say, one is you patiently listen, but then I think there are times when you need to probably tell the customer also that there are too many things that are coming on the plate. So probably you need to cut down on a few things, and then understand what are those 2 or 3 core requirements that are there. As I say, in our case, the core requirement was space. So along with space comes your minimalist theme, right? Because obviously you can't have a clutter and space. They are contradictory to each other, right? So they don't talk to each other. So if it has to be space, then it has to be clutter free. It has to be minimalist. And again, space has got to do with a lot of how the materials or the choice of colors that you use. Use a darker color, the sense of space goes away. You use materials, let's say for example in kitchen you use lacquered glass, then again there is a sense of space that comes in because there's a lot of reflection of light that comes in, right? So I think it's about understanding those, because I also had about 7 or 8 requirements, but then it's all about me not understanding that some of those 7 or 8 things could actually be linked to probably maybe 2, 3 larger themes as such. Get the customer to hone in on that 2 or 3 basic requirements, and then work around that, so that the vision is something, vision that probably the client has for his home is met. I think it's not about, I think it's more about talking. It's also about helping the customer get a lot of, helping the client get a lot of clarity, because the client also would be having a lot of cluttered thoughts, right? X, Y, Z, because obviously you bought a home with a lot of your with your hard-earned money, and then you would want the absolute best for it. You would have certain budget that would be available, and there's only so much that can come in that budget, right? So what can come in a budget, and how much can you increase your budget by, so that a lot of these things can be incorporated.
So probably get your idea, get understanding, and hone it down to specifics, which
I think
is
it's
the most
about
important
helping client get the clarity also.
Okay.
I think that is absolutely critical,
if a
because
designer out there wants to, customers come with a cluttered concept. This is also good. This is also good. Now, if a designer is able to tell why is this good and why this isn't good,
it's not about why this is good or why the other thing is bad. It's all about probably trying to explain to the client, saying that, okay, fine, this would give you a certain theme, the other would give you a different theme. So they are probably contrasting themes, which probably may not go well. So there may not be a uniformity that probably comes in terms of house, in terms of how the home comes across. But the other thing about uniformity is that it becomes very single tone, monotone as such. But then even within that uniformity, how do you get that bit of variety, or a bit of what I would say, a bit of jazz coming in as such. I think that's where the designer has a role to play. Otherwise, I could have different parts of the home following completely different things, and then depending on which part of the home I'm in, I could actually be in a completely different theme as such. One of the things for us was, the core thing was that space. Absolutely. I would not say absolutely, because we also do have a lot of storage spaces and all that, but then compared to what we've seen earlier, and compared to what we have seen, what we've experienced in let's say homes that other people have got, and I think for us it's absolutely essential storage spaces that are there. Otherwise, I think it's about getting a sense of space in the house. That was absolutely critical. And then it has to something which probably has to stand the test of time. Like for example, there are certain things which are probably what I would say as a trend. Right now, trends keep changing. Now there are certain things which probably are which probably last the test of time. I think contemporary is something which, irrespective of what's the fad or what's the trend, I think it would still probably stay relevant. I think probably for us to stay relevant, for the home to stay relevant was absolutely important. And
So basically, a designer is going through a lot of these things and able to get that idea and give back to you, suggest you, and then overall give you the costing of it. Yeah, you like something, you like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. We keep on increasing, and finally we come to know that, okay, this is
no, it's about,
way about.
yeah, it's about getting that thing that you do this is the cost.
This
but
is the
you can
cost.
also do this, but this would be the cost. And then have that clarity before you actually start executing the project. In our case, what happened was that because we didn't overshoot we overshot our budget, but then that was largely because we added a few things. Let's say, for example, there was a countertop for one of let's say the storage spaces in the in the dining hall, where probably we wanted a quartz top, right, which was not a part of the thing. So we added that. Then something like in the dining hall again, we initially thought that we'll go for bevel mirrors. It was initially covering just probably a quarter of the wall. Then we probably increased that to almost half the wall. Right. So obviously you do that, your costing goes up. But then there's a different sense of aesthetics that comes in. But then of course you cannot overshoot your cost, let's say by 50-60%. I think anybody would be okay with a 10 or 15% upside, provided there's value that comes in that upside. It's not that as long as money well spent.
It's a controlled
It's a controlled
upscale.
thing. It's a controlled upscale. You just can't go bonkers on increasing your cost as such.
So that designers are pretty straightforward in giving you this material, this thing, this is the cost. Alternatively, you go this, and then and every time a customer basically want to work around a budget. Everybody has an X amount of budget to get started. So you mentioned that definitely you increase it, it increases. You decrease, it decreases.
Correct.
But still, to have 10-15% for sure as a backup, that it might shoot up this much, and to be prepared around that.
And then you basically give the clarity to the customer saying that, okay, fine, you do this. This is let's say for example, in our case, for a living room, one of the walls we were really not sure what to do, and then I came across some video on YouTube or some article which talked about Luso panels. So that's when I went back to the designer and asked him, okay, what is this Luso panel? So then I was clearly told that this is what a Luso panel does. This is what the costing would be, and so there was a certain plan that we had for the wall, and if we were to go for the Luso panel, then probably the costing would go up by about 20-30% on what the initial plan was. So then we were okay to take that call. So we were okay to take the call.
So it goes hand in hand, right? A lot of times last minute changes are not.
Last minute changes are
sometimes as a company, as a firm, they don't appreciate it because it is going to simply drag the work, and it is already a challenge, and then last minute. So do you think if a designer is able to do that?
See, I think as long as the designers also will have to be a little accommodative in terms of, let's say, not changes to the entire layout. Let's say, for example, you can't, let's say the TV.
So they should be flexible.
If the TV unit has to be placed in a particular way, and that was how it was designed, and you do the wiring and you do everything around that with that thought in mind, suddenly you change it to the opposite, then obviously it just goes haywire. I don't think those are the things that we're talking about. Let's say, as I said, in my case, there was one wall where we were really not sure what we want to do. Initially, the thing was we'll go for louvers and all that, but then the concept of the Luso panel came up, and we were okay with that, saying that, okay, fine, I mean, there's a certain value that we will get from the Luso panel, and then the way to calculate the cost is not look at Luso panel as a standalone cost. Okay, fine, I'm going to spend a certain amount of money in terms of putting the louvers up. I'm going to spend a certain amount of money in terms of probably getting that wall decked up in whatever way it was. Now, if I'm spending about, let's say, 40,000 on that, now Luso panel would probably cost me about 80,000 rupees. So it's like double the thing. So inflation is about, let's say,
Almost 40. It'll
from
double
40 to 80.
It's almost double.
So I'm paying another 40k extra. I'm not paying 80k. I'm paying 40k extra. So I think probably that's the way I look at it, and then see if there is any value that I get from spending that 40,000 rupees.
So it's already worth it comparing
So
that
at least
to compare
for me,
this.
whatever I've decision that I've taken, and that was again suggested by the designer, that it would give a completely a different look and appearance, and something which will be, I would not say timeless, but then would really stand the test of time. And it's been about 3 years, and every time we look at that particular part of the home, I think there's a very nice contrast that comes
area.
in. And I think one interesting thing about that Luso panel was that we and the designer didn't agree on one thing, saying that I think the designer wanted some, let's say, design element to be there on the Luso panel, because it had a mirror finish, it had a mirror engravings in between, but it was largely plain black. And then we wanted some things to come on, let's say maybe a bird figurines, or some flowers and all that to be stuck. But we said no, we just wanted to be plain. And I think we still go by that, the thing, saying that fine, because we had neutral colors on the wall and this was black, so it was contrasting very well. So we didn't want another element of contrast on the wall. So
all in all, it fit in properly.
It fit in perfectly, and then I think somewhere, I think credit to the designer also, saying that fine, that they saw our point of view in terms of why we didn't want to go for that, and it was all well.
So finally, what is the advice that you have for a customer who's looking for designers?
I think come with your thoughts, but then be open to listen to the designer, and then there's a lot of merit that probably comes from the other side. That there is it's not like that it is just plain talk without substance that's coming in. So obviously interior designing is a lot about aesthetics. It's also about science, because it's all about the kind of materials that you use and what effect the materials have. As I said, the lacquered glass, for us, you can just see it as a plain glass, but then it goes with the overall theme of getting a lot of light, and with light you get a lot of space, and then it has a reflective property. The glass has a reflective property, so it adds to the overall thing. So there's a lot of merit that probably comes in from the other side, and it's not that the designers are out to loot you. It's not that the designers are out to increase the cost by let's say keep adding things which are not required. I think in our case we were also suggested not to go for certain things because it would not add any value or would not make any sense. Right, so it's just have an open mind. It's not that you approach the entire process with the thought that that a designer is there to only add to your cost. There's a lot of merit that comes in. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. I mean, you go for something, you don't go for something. The choice is entirely yours. But then you can always hear out what options are there, and then you take your call depending on what your budgets are.
That was really an intensive and a lot of findings that we could come across.
I mean, it's actually been a learning process for us also throughout. Now, probably if I were to get the house done now, maybe I would follow a completely different approach. I mean, with the same minimalist, contemporary sense of space approach, but then I would probably design it a little differently than what it is right now. Not to say that we are not happy with what we have. We're extremely happy with what we have, and then it stood the test of time, because despite 3 years, it's not looking as if that it's out of fad or something. It's aged well, and it still gives us those good vibes as such. But then obviously you tend to pick up things as you go along, saying that okay, maybe you could have done it a little differently and all that. But then that's
that is always there.
That's for another day.
Yes.
But I think a good test of your interior design is whether it can actually stand the test of time, whether it can actually stay relevant despite the new trends that are coming up, and whether it reflects your personality in many ways, if not all, at least in quite a few ways. So I think that's what it is.
So thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
Absolutely.
I hope this was worth a while for us, for everybody who's watching it. Any other questions or any other queries, if anybody has, please write to us. We'll be very happy to share. And thank you for watching this series. If this video helped you in some ways, please support us by subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching this unique episode. We are committed to bring more such real-time episodes to you. For those of you who want to know what materials and what finishes that have been used in this project, I will be attaching a link. You click on the link to find a PDF file which has all the details of the project. Stay tuned.